Sally that girl in the kitchen. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sally that girl in the kitchen. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you how to make Frituras de Espinaca, fried spinach patties, also known as albóndigas de espinaca. These are a very typical Sephardic-Turkish dish that we serve during Passover and during Rosh Hashanah. And they are incredible. And of course, you can serve them all year round because they are so good. And once you try them, you're going to want to make these often. They have that delicious spinach and just a touch of meat, and they are just beautifully fried and golden. You are going to love them. So let's not wait another second and let's get started. For today's recipe, you will need 4 tablespoons of grapeseed oil plus 3 more cups separate, 2 large yellow onions, 4 pounds of frozen spinach thawed and squeezed, 2 pounds of lean ground beef, 1 cup of matzah meal plus more for breading the patties, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 3/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, 2 teaspoons of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, 1.5 tablespoons of consommé powder, 3/4 of a packet of onion soup mix, 3 extra large eggs, or 4 if your eggs aren't very large, plus 3 or 4 more separate, and a box of chicken broth, but you will only be using a few ounces of it. You will also need a cutting board and a knife, a skimmer or a spider, and a large fork such as a serving fork, some wet measuring cups, some dry measuring cups, some measuring spoons, a plate and some paper towel, a large bowl, 2 medium-sized bowls and a fork, and another smaller bowl with another fork. You will also need 1 or 2 large skillets. I'm going to be using one to fry my onions and then another to fry my fried spinach patties in, but you could use the same one, just wash it in between. And finally, you will need 1 more plate and a wooden spoon or the stirring utensil of your choice. So now that we have all of our ingredients and tools together, let's get started. So what I like to do is the night before I'm ready to make my frituras de espinaca, I pull my frozen spinach out of the freezer and I set it in the sink and let it thaw overnight. That way in the morning, it's going to be ready to be squeezed out. So then the next morning, I open each of my packages and then I'm going to take that spinach that is very wet because of course it was frozen, and I'm going to grab it bunch by bunch in my hands, and I'm going to squeeze it really well to remove all of that water. You will have to squeeze each bunch a good 4 or 5 times to really get rid of the liquid, but it is really important because you want your frituras de espinaca to hold together, and you definitely don't want a wet mixture. So you squeeze the water out really well, and then when there's no water left, then you can add it to your bowl. So you're just going to repeat this process over and over. You're going to grab your spinach bunch by bunch in your hand, and then you're going to squeeze it out. Make sure you get all that water out, and then add it to your bowl. And you're going to repeat this process until you've squeezed the water out of all 4 pounds of spinach. Now, once you've squeezed all the water out and added all of the spinach to your bowl, then you just want to use your hands to break up any bunches because, of course, we squeezed the spinach real tight, and so it formed some tight bunches. So what we want to do is go in with our hands and just break up all those bunches and just loosen up that spinach. Just make sure that there's no clumps and your spinach is nice and loose. So once your spinach is ready, it's time to move on to your onions. So grab your 2 yellow onions and then peel them and cut them into small, equally sized pieces. Then grab your large skillet and measure out that small portion of oil and add it to your skillet. Then bring over the onions that you just cut up and add them to your skillet. Then you want to turn your heat on to medium to start browning the onions. So what I like to do is I use a wooden spoon with a flat edge, and I just go around stirring my onions in the pan and just move them around every so often and just spread them out so that they all get a little touch of that oil that we have added to the pan, and it will really just help them brown and develop a beautiful color. And every few minutes I come back and I just stir them up one more time, just move them around a bit in my pan, and you're going to notice that very quickly they will start to develop a beautiful golden color and of course a delicious scent. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes or so on medium heat to develop a beautiful golden color, but of course stovetops vary, so just continue to cook them up until you get that beautiful golden color, and then once you're there, turn your heat off, and then of course just set them aside and take them off the hot burner. We want to let these onions cool down a bit, so just leave them right there in the skillet and let them cool. Now, it's time to season our spinach. Measure out your chicken consomme powder and add it right on top of your spinach. And then you want to do the same with your onion powder, your garlic powder, your salt, and your ground black pepper. Now, once all of these ingredients are in, add 3/4 of a packet of onion soup mix. 3/4 of a packet is enough for this amount of spinach. So I just sprinkle it in and then I just leave some at the bottom of the packet, and that's more than enough. Then measure out your matzah meal and add it right on top of this mix. And then once you've done that, set your bowl aside and bring over your eggs, crack them in a bowl and beat them well. Remember, either 3 extra large eggs or 4 eggs if you're using any other size. If you're not sure, then go with 4. So add them to your mixture and then bring over your ground beef, and you're going to add that too. And then we're going to bring over those delicious golden onions that we just fried up that have now had a chance to cool down, and we're going to add them right in. Now, as usual, I like to start with a spoon or some type of utensil to break down my meat and to just bring all my mixture together. But if you've watched any of my videos before, you know that there is nothing like mixing with your hands. So yes, start with your spoon or whatever it is you're using and break up your meat and mix things together. But then at some point, you're gonna realize that it's time to switch to your hands, because once you've broken up those big chunks of meat, it's very difficult to incorporate the egg and the matzah meal and all those yummy spices and make sure it's well distributed amongst the mixture. So just chop up using your wooden spoon or spatula. But once the chunks have been broken down and there's no real big pieces of meat, then it's time to switch and use your hands instead. So what I like to do is I kind of go to the bottom of the mixture, see how there's egg there that hasn't really been incorporated, and I just use my hands and go from the bottom to the top and just fold the mixture over onto itself, because what I'm looking to do is bring this mixture together. See, look how different it looks once it's properly been mixed. That is what it should look like when it's ready to shape your fried spinach patties. So what we do is we grab a ball and see how it fits in the palm of my hand, and then we squeeze it down using our fingertips and the palm of our hand, and we just shape it into a circle, kind of like when you're making a hamburger patty, but the size of it should be about the palm of your hand. Now keep in mind, I have an average sized female hand, so really if you have a huge hand, then you don't want to go super big. But that's about the size you're looking for, and see how nicely it's stuck together. It doesn't break apart because it has just the right amount of matzo meal and egg. That is perfect. Then grab a clean plate and add your spinach patty onto it. Then continue this process over and over until you formed all of your patties. I find it's much easier to form my patties first so that I have them ready to be coated and fried. As a point of reference, I was able to get 22 patties out of this amount of mixture, so you should get somewhere near 22. Look at how pretty these guys look, and they haven't even been fried yet. They are going to be delicious. I can't wait. And I will mention that I have in the past tripled or even quadrupled this recipe when we have a large family gathering. So yes, I realize that that is 66 to 88 frituras de espinaca, but hey, when you have a big family gathering, why not? So now it's time to set up our coating and frying station. So grab one of your medium bowls and you're just gonna add some matzo meal to it. I don't really measure this out. I just pour some in, just make sure that I have enough. And then of course, if I need more, I can just sprinkle in some more. And then once I prepare my matzo meal bowl, then I'm going to grab another medium bowl and I'm going to crack 3 or 4 eggs into it. And I'm going to beat them well with a fork to have them ready for my coating station. Then grab your large skillet, either the same one or a clean one, just make sure it's been washed and dried, and add to it your 3 cups of grapeseed oil. This amount can vary, of course, depending on the diameter of your skillet, but what you're looking to have is about a 1/2 inch or so of oil, no more than 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. And then once you do, you're going to set your stove to medium heat and have near you your spider and fork and be ready to fry. So what I do is I set up a station with my patties, my egg, my matzo meal, and then in the back I have a plate that I have lined with paper towel, and then right next to that is my oil and my frying utensils, and that way I can just put my patties right onto that paper towel and we're good to go. So on my stove, it takes about 5 minutes for my oil to heat up and be ready to go. So let's get started. Grab a patty and you're going to put it into your beaten egg, and you're just going to flip it over a couple of times to make sure it gets nicely coated with egg. And then you're going to switch it and put it in the other bowl with matzo meal, and you're going to do the same. You just want to flip it a few times and just make sure that the sides get coated, and basically you want to make sure that it's nicely covered in matzo meal, and then it's going to be ready to be added to your oil. So since I've been making these for years, I work pretty quickly. So I just dip them, coat them, and put them into the oil. But if you're not comfortable working that quickly, then of course you can make a few patties and put them on a plate, and once they're coated, then you could add them into your oil. You can do it however you are comfortable doing. That is fine. When I'm making a really big batch, I have been known to have 2 or even 3 frying pans going at once. But yes, I recognize that's a little crazy, so I don't recommend it. 1 is probably more than fine. So with the amount of patties I have, I know that I'm going to be frying 3 times. So what I want to do is I'm going to be dividing my groups into 7, and then one of my groups will have 8 because I do have 22 patties. So I'm going to put 8 in this first batch, and I'm going to fry it up, and then I'm going to fry twice more, groups of 7. Now, you want to let them fry on one side for a good 3 or 4 minutes because we want to develop a beautiful golden crust. So just be patient and let them sit for 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're going to turn them over and you're going to continue to cook them on the other side to help develop that beautiful crust on the opposite side. So you'll notice I'm using my serving fork, and of course I'm helping myself with my skimmer, or a spider would work just fine. And that way I carefully flip them over. So it's really helpful to have that fork and that skimmer or spider to help with the flipping process. Now, once the second side fries for about another 4 or so minutes, what I like to do is turn over a patty or 2 and just check that the bottom side has also developed that beautiful golden color that you are looking for. If you're not fully satisfied, then of course give it another minute, or flip the ones that you feel may need some color on the top side. There's no rules. The idea is to just give them a good 3 or 4 minutes to cook on either side and to develop a beautiful golden crust. And then once you feel that both sides of your patties look golden and have developed that delicious crust that we are looking for, then you can start removing them. So carefully, using either your skimmer or your spider, you're going to remove them from the hot oil. And what I'm doing is I'm placing them on that plate that I lined with paper towel because I want that excess oil to drip off of my patties and to be absorbed by the paper towel so that my frituras de espinaca will not feel greasy whatsoever. I promise you that these do not feel greasy at all. They just develop a beautiful crust, but the inside in no way gets oily. It's just fantastic. So now that I've removed my first batch from the hot oil, I'm going to show you what they look like once they have been fully fried, and they are so gorgeous. Look at that beautiful crust that has been developed and that beautiful spinach peeking through. They are really super, super yummy. So, of course, you're going to repeat the same process over again, and you're going to dip and coat another batch of frituras de espinaca. This time I'm doing 7. And as I said earlier, you can coat all 7 at once if you're more comfortable, and that way you can add them quicker into the oil so that they all go in at a similar time. And you can use an even bigger bowl for your matzah meal. So 7 or 8 patties fit right there in the bowl and they're coated and ready to fry. Or you can just grab a spare plate and place your 7 or 8 patties on that plate and then grab them from there. Or you can just do one by one, whatever you prefer. So for this batch, for demonstration purposes, I coated all 7 of my frituras so that they were all ready at the same time to go into the hot oil and fry. You definitely want to do this if you're not a super quick worker, because you do want to give all of your frituras a similar frying time so that they are all cooked throughout at about the same speed. So I strongly suggest you use this method, especially if you are a beginner. So now that my second batch is in, I've let them fry 3 or 4 minutes on one side, and now it's time to turn them over. So all I'm doing is repeating the same process that I did with my first batch, and remembering to cook them a good 3 or 4 minutes on either side before removing them from the hot oil. And what I like to do is I take some paper towel and I just lay it right on top of that first batch of patties that I fried, because I'm just going to add these right on top of those. And of course I put the layer of paper towel in between so that it can help absorb the excess oil from this second batch of frituras de espinaca. Now, if you're doing a small batch and you just want to lay out 3 plates and line all 3 of them with paper towel, that's fine. But that becomes complicated when you're doing a really big batch because you don't want to have a ton of plates all over your counter lined with paper towel. So it's okay to stack them up on top of each other as long as you are putting paper towel between the layers, and you can go as high up as 3, 4, 5 layers. Of course, don't go too high or they will tumble down. So let me show you what I mean. You see how between the bottom layer and the top layer, I set out another layer of paper towel to absorb the oil from the top patties? That's what I mean. You can layer them right on top of each other, just separate them with some paper towel for absorption. And then of course, go on to your third batch, which in this case will be our final batch of frituras de espinaca. And then repeat the same process again. Dip them in egg, coat them in matzo meal, put them in the hot oil, 3 or 4 minutes on one side, then turn them over, cook for another 3 or 4 minutes on the second side, check to make sure they're developing a beautiful golden color, and then remove them and put them on another layer of paper towel to absorb the oil. Now, I will mention, if you are making a larger batch, let's say you duplicated or triplicated the recipe or even more, then you are going to eventually run out of oil. It is going to start to consume and you may need to add more oil. So if you're making a bigger batch, just keep that in mind because you will probably be able to fry another batch or 2 in this same oil. But then after you fry 4 or 5 batches, your oil has a lot of residue from the matzo meal and it's going to become more difficult to fry your patties. So then at that point, you would probably want to replace your oil with clean oil. Now, at this point, I am done frying. So I'm going to turn my stove off and then I'm going to remove the hot oil very carefully from the heat to let it cool so that I can dispose of it properly. So how beautiful are my albóndigas de espinaca or frituras de espinaca or fried spinach patties or gifticas or giftes or whatever it is that you know them by. They are beautiful. Look at that golden color, and they've got just a light coating of that matzo meal that gives them a little bit of a crunch on the outside. They are really so gorgeous, and they can be served just like this, but we Sephardic Turks, or at least in my family, have an extra step that we use when we are ready to serve our frituras de espinaca. Just like I did when I made my frituras de brasa video, my fried leek patties, we serve these by warming them up and adding just a touch of chicken broth to them. As if they weren't already delicious, we are going to now add a little touch of chicken broth to them right before we serve them. The good thing is we just need a touch of broth, and what you want to do is you add your patties to an oven-safe dish, such as a Pyrex, and then you're going to just drizzle them with a little bit of broth. You can use a small ladle, or you can use a Pyrex measuring cup, anything you're comfortable with to just give them a little bit of a drizzle. You don't want a lot of broth because you don't want it to accumulate at the bottom because you don't want to make your frituras soggy, but this will keep them nice and moist while they warm up in the oven. So just put them in an oven that has been preheated to 350 degrees, and then just put them in there for a few minutes to warm them up. If you're doing a full tray, then probably about a good 15-20 minutes or so to warm them up. So I just heated up 2 to show you how it's done, and of course so that I could sample one because I have been cooking for a while and now it's time to taste it. Look at how beautiful it looks. It's golden and it's got that little bit of a crust on it. It's just so perfect. Ooh, I can't wait to try this. Look at the inside, how beautiful it looks. You see that meat just speckled through it and that spinach and those delicious fried onions. This is gonna be So good. I think I love it every time, just a little bit more than I did the last time I ate it. It is really spectacular. It's got that little bit of a crunch and that patty holds together so well. It's just so beautiful. Look at the inside of this. It's just really an amazing dish that is really going to impress everyone. They're going to love it. I need to have another bite. So good. Wow. I'm telling you, it just gets better every time. Amazing. They are so yummy and they're just moist on the inside because we warmed them up with that broth, but they still remain crispy on the outside. And just look at how beautiful they look. Amazing. So good. You're really going to love them. Look at that crispy crust on the outside. Delicious. So good. So how incredibly delicious do these look? You have no idea. They are really spectacular. That touch of meat, that broth that we use right before we serve them, and of course, the star of the show, that spinach. Incredible. They are so tasty. When fried golden, you are going to love them. Trust me. No, better yet, don't trust me. You're going to have to try to make this recipe yourself. And of course, if you've enjoyed today's recipe, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Most importantly, remember to share. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and to touch that little notification bell so that you don't miss out on a single amazing, incredible, delicious, different recipe that I have planned for you. And if you're not following me already on social media, make sure to follow Sally That Girl in the Kitchen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. See you next time. Sally That Girl in the Kitchen.